Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about some interview questions of internal audit, and this is the session 5. Thanks for the amazing response you shared on video 1 to video 4, and based on that feedback only I come up with some scenario based question which is asked in the interview job, especially in the big 4. My name is Prab Nair, and for more information you can check my LinkedIn profile. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topic. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so first interview question is, what technique do you use to detect potential fraud indicators during an audit? It's a very frequent question, especially when you involved in the interviews of big fours, and when you're giving a interview for the financial audits. So this is a frequent question they ask. So question is how to answer. Okay, so my suggestion is that start with an overview first. Okay, it's very important to give the overview. So you can basically begin by explaining that fraud detection is an essential aspect of the internal audit process. Then you can mention your approach. Okay, like involve using a combination of a technique and thorough understanding of the original or thorough understanding of the method of the organization, processes and control. So that you can start always with the overview, because you cannot directly talk about fraud indicator is basically do in a finance or all that. No, give the overview. That's the first most important thing. Second is you can explain them, okay, if we're dealing with a bunch of great data and all that, so with the help of data analytics we can able to find the pattern. So highlight your proficiencies in using a data analytic tools, because today if you're talking about an audit, there's a great demand of data analytics. A lot of companies are using data analytics by which they can able to review the volume of data. So you need to highlight your proficiencies in using a data analytics tools and techniques to analyze a large volume of data for your irregular patterns, anomalies, potential fraudulent transactions, and try to give emphasis on the value of data-driven insights which identifying the fraud indicators. After that, the next point you can talk about internal control evaluation. So you can mention that you assess the effectiveness of internal controls, particularly those designed to prevent and detect frauds. Explain that a critical part of your audit process, identifying the weakness in a control that could leave the organization vulnerable to the fraud risk and all that. Then also talk about the trend and ratio analysis. Talk about how you perform trend analysis on financial data. Okay, analyze key ratios to identify the unusual fluctuations or unexpected patterns that might indicate the fraudulent activity. So when you add this point, which is called as a trend and ratio analysis, I'm sure it can be the turning factor of your interview job. Okay, so it's very important to identify, okay, after 6 p.m. lot of fraud transactions happening, which is not a normal regular thing. Some transaction is happening after 11 p.m. Normally business hours is only 9 to 5, but so this is called as a trend. So work on those logs and all that, by which we can able to identify frauds and all that. Then the next thing we have is which is called as a red flag. Okay, so discuss your familiarity with the common red flag indicators of fraud. Okay, how you actively look for such sudden lifestyle changes, financial difficulties or unexplained behaviors among the employees. So that can be also. So when you talk about these indicators and map with some lifestyle change of the employee, example like you are involved in one fraud audit where you can see the person having iPhone now, but before that he does not even have a phone, or he has a normal phone. So the sudden change in the behavior, sudden change in the lifestyle can lead to the fraud and all that, because might be he got some excess amount of money. So it's not about only red flag indicator from a technical point of view, but also from an administrative point of view. Then transaction testing and review. Explain that you conduct detailed testing of high risk transactions to verify their accuracy, legitimacy, compliance with established procedures. Mention that you pay special attention to transactions involve large amount of non-standard terms. Okay, that you can add. Along with that, you can also add the fraud risk assessment, where you can describe your experience in collaborating with the management, how you collaborate with the management to perform a fraud risk assessment, helps to identify area of highest risk for potential frauds and guide the focus on your audit procedure. And last but not the least, to understand the new audits and all that, you need to upgrade yourself. So this is a very, very important point. So when you're trying to explain about how you detect the frauds, continuous professional development is very important, because that actually, inspire the interviewer to hire you more, because they can see that, okay, this person is continuously upgrading his knowledge and all that, and it is very important for any company. Okay, so you can able to provide the specific example of from your previous work experience or academic project to illustrate how you have successfully used the ability use the new techniques to identify potential fraud indicators during an audit. Additionally, showcase your ability, how you can work collaboratively with the stakeholders, your dedications to ensure the organization financial integrity and security. So by using this particular techniques, you can able to answer this question. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. It's a very, very important question, okay, because your audit works depending upon the materiality. So definitely interviewer is going to ask this question in a level 3. So question is, how do you determine materiality when planning an audit? And how does it impact the scope and nature of your testing? Let's first understand materiality. Materiality is a concept. Okay, materiality is a concept in auditing which refer to the size of error. Okay, so if you go by the process here, example like materiality is basically called as a size of error. Okay, so you need to understand is, if we have a biggest, or you can say largest error during an audit, it can basically impact the audit risk. Audit risk basically mean based on the wrong data we take an opinion. So question saying that how do you determine the materiality? Because by asking this question, the interviewer want to judge your experience, your focus toward the audit. Okay, so first explain him, okay, like thank you for asking this question. Let me first explain you what is materiality. So materiality is a concept in auditing that refer to the size of error or omissions that would influence the decision of users of the financial statement. So this is how you can answer. So when you're planning an audit, determining a materiality involve your quantitative and qualitative assessment of financial information significant to the user, and materiality is typically expressed as a percentage of a specific financial benchmark like total assets, revenue, net income. Okay, so that's something we have. So when you determine the materiality, we have to focus on two things: quantitative factor and qualitative factor. So when I say quantitative factor, like auditor basically consider the financial benchmark here. Okay, financial benchmark. So when I say financial benchmark, example like 3%, 5%, or we talk about the industry norms. We talk about industry norms, and we also talk about regulatory requirement. Okay, regulatory requirement. So these are the parameters we have. So which is basically set as a materiality threshold. So example, common benchmark include percentage of the total asset or revenue. Example, 5% of a total assets or 3% of total revenue. Then we also have a qualitative factor when you're determining a materiality like entity financial conditions, debt, okay, the nature of its operation. Okay, so that is something we can do. Then we will see what is the impact. See, another important factor when we consider is the impact on scope also. Okay, question talking about now how do you determine the materiality? So first you determine the materiality based on a quantitative and qualitative, but another important factor is what is the scope. Small scope give better visibility, so we have a less materiality. Bigger scope, we need a more data. Then when you need more data, it basically lead to the more materiality errors. So high materiality and low materiality is the response here. So high materiality result in a larger scope of audit testing, focus on the area with a significant financial impact. Okay, so less emphasis is placed on the immaterial accounts or low transactions, where on the other low materiality is threshold lead to more extensive audit scope. We examine more accounts, okay, transactions to identify even minor statements. So that is what we have. Definitely required more people. Then it's also depending upon the nature of testing. Okay, nature of testing. Example like when materiality is high, auditor may conduct less detailed testing, rely on the broader analytical procedures and less granular transaction testing, and this approach is more risk-based and efficient. On the other side, low materiality is basically with a lower materiality, auditor perform more in-depth testing of individual transactions and account balance to capture even minor statement, ensure the higher accuracy. Along with that, we do risk assessment. So materiality influence the risk assessment process. So high materiality reduce the risk appetite, leading to more conservative risk assessment and additional substantive testing. where conversely low materiality threshold may result in a more aggressive risk assessment approach because we focus on the potential impact of even small error on the financial statement. Along with that, we also use a reporting and communication. So materiality impact how audit findings are reported, because material misstated are clearly communicated in audit reports, while immaterials or immaterial errors may be aggregated or communicated separately in a different context. So these are the factors we have that we consider when you basically determine the materiality. And to reduce the materiality, we have a testings, we have a samples. Okay, that's something we can have. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. So next question is, imagine you are conducting an audit of a large construction project. What criteria would you use to evaluate the project progress and financial controls? I repeat again, imagine you are conducting an audit of a large construction project. What criteria would you use to evaluate the project progress and financial control? So how to answer? Okay, it's a very important question. Mostly they ask in the leadership positions. So how to answer is, first, budget versus actual expenditure. So compare the project budget cost. Example, you're doing an audit for data center. So compare the project budget cost with the actual expenditure. So you can able to assess whether spending is in line with the approved budget, investigate a significant deviations and variance to understand their causes. Second is cost control measure. Evaluate the effectiveness of a cost control measure implemented by a project management team. You can also assess whether cost is overrun or being, appropriately addressed and managed. The third is called project milestone and timeline. That is another important thing. So review the project progress against the established milestone and timeline. Identify any delay, slippage, which assess the impact on the project overall schedule. That's a very, very important thing. Look for the quality assurance. So examine all the project adherence to all the quality standard and regulatory requirement. Verify that, constructions, buildings, parameters, whatever we have, it complies with the relevant building codes and industry regulations. Then look for the contractual agreement. So review all the terms and conditions of contract with the contractors, suppliers, vendors, and ensure that contract terms are being adhered to and that appropriate contract management procedures are in place. Look for the change order management also. Evaluate the process for managing change orders and scope changes in the project. Verify that change order are properly approved, documented and justified. Look for the payment control also, where you assess the control in place for authorizing and processing payment to the contractor and supplier. Verify that payments are supported by the appropriate documentations, which is made accordance with the you can say contract terms. We also look for the insurance coverage. We review the project insurance coverage to ensure that it adequately protect against the potential risk and liability. We also look for the project documentations, where we examine the completeness and accuracy of project documentation, including your project plan, progress report, meeting minutes. And last but not the least, internal control and risk management is a very, very important point. We're going to evaluate the project internal controls, risk management practice, and also we're going to assess whether risks are appropriately identified, assessed, and mitigated. So these are basically activities we have by which you can able to evaluate the project progress and financial control. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, so we got the next interview question, a very tricky question. Mostly this kind of a question asked in that case when they want to evaluate your experience, not necessarily a fresher, but he has a 1 year of experience, and with that particular parameter they want to validate how much they know about the what the expectation is the candidate familiar with the regulations, compliance and all that. So if you see the question here, the question talking about is, describe your experience with specific regulatory framework or industry standard like SOX, GDPR, ISO 27001, and how you ensure compliance during an audit. By asking this question, they want to validate whether the person has experience or not. So question is how to answer. So while answering this question, you need to describe your experience first. With the specific regulatory, how you ensure compliance during audit. So the first thing is that specific experience. So you can mention a specific project or audit where you have applied your knowledge of of this framework. For example, in one of my interview, I told I have been involved in auditing the effectiveness of internal control over financial reporting in compliance with SOX requirement for the public listed companies. I was involved in doing an audit of SOC 2 and all that. This is how you can basically start your story. Then you can talk about the audit approach. So first you set the benchmark. Okay, like, you first set the story baseline. This is how I experience the audit, and this is how the approach I have used. So where you can explain about your approach to ensure compliance during an audit, which include the combination of a documentation review, interview with the key stakeholders, process walkthrough, data analysis. So in the audit approach, you can basically talk about your process. Okay, like as I said, documentation is there, data analysis are involved. And the third most important thing is basically called as a interview the key stakeholders. So by this, the interviewer get some assurance that this guy has experience in the audit. Then compliance assessment. So describe the step you take to assess the compliance with a specific regulatory framework or industry standard. And this may involve, evaluating the control design, testing control, operating effectiveness. You can also identify any kind of a deficiencies or gap that you have discovered. Then we talk about next is reporting and communication. So now you have talked about the approach, you talk about how you assess the gap. Now the next part is reporting. You need to give emphasis on how you communicate the audit findings, because it is one of the most important part of any audit we have. So you need to communicate about audit finding, how you communicate the finding to the management. You need to discuss how you present the compliance status. You need to highlight the area of non-compliance, which basically provide the recommendation for the improvement. Further to that, you can talk about the continuous professional development. I believe this is one of the most important point which can bring confidence in the interviewer that you are the right candidate. Because the company also want to know whether the person is spending money or spending time or doing an investment on his skills and all that, because every company want a individual who up to date with the new things and all that and handle the challenge. So you can also talk about, during one of the audits, I was facing some new regulations and all that. So you need to give your information about the commitment to staying updated with the latest changes in the regulatory framework and industry standard. You can talk about any relevant certifications or training that you have completed to enhance the expertise and all that. Like example, one of my interview, I told, okay, I'm involved in example, recently I completed my C-risk, I was doing CIPM because I know the future will be the privacy. I want to do some kind of a certification on CIPP by which I can able to create a value among the stakeholders. So that is how you can able to convey the point. Further that, you can basically also talk about the collaboration. You can highlight how you work collaboratively with audit team, stakeholders and subject matter experts, so that we can able to ensure the comprehensive understanding of the organization compliance status. Then you also talk about the successful outcome, like you can share any successful outcome or achievement resulting from your audit, such as identifying, rectifying the control deficiencies, which is leading to improve the compliance and risk assessment. So let me go give you an example of that. So example, like I'm going to summarize this entire thing with our interview reference. So like, as I said, like this way, in my previous role as an internal auditor, I have gained a significant experience with the regulatory frameworks such as SOX and GDPR and standards like ISO 27001. During my audit, I apply a risk-based approach by conducting a documentation review, process walkthrough, data analysis, okay, by which I can able to assess the compliance with this framework. For instance, I've been also involved in auditing the effectiveness of internal control over the financial reporting in compliance with SOX requirement. I also collaborated closely with stakeholders and subject matter experts to ensure the comprehensive understanding of the organization compliance status. Additionally, I continuously update my knowledge through the relevant certifications, professional development program. And through this effort, I have successfully identified control deficiencies and, provided the valuable recommendation for the improving the compliance and risk management practice. Along with that, by following the structure, I was able to successfully deliver the project. So when you giving such kind of a response, by following the structure, you can basically provide the clear and concise response that showcase your expertise, experience with a specific regulatory framework and industry standard, as well as your approach to ensure compliance during an audit. This is my suggestion. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Okay. Yeah. So it basically tests your patience. The auditor want to test your communication, and interviewer also want to check your leadership skills, how you basically handle the conflicts and all that. So question is, how do you handle conflicts or differences of opinion within a team during an audit engagement? Okay. I always start with the teamwork process. So I always say you can start by highlighting the significance of teamwork and collaborating in achievement successful audit outcome. You can acknowledge the conflicts, the difference of opinions, which is natural in terms of team, but can manage constructively. Second point, you can say, in order to handle the opinions and all that, you need to have a good active listening skills. You can explain that you'll actively listen to the team member during a discussion, encourage open communication, because listening help you to understand the different perspective and also encourage the open communication. Okay, and listening help you to understand different perspective, which also allow the team member to feel heard and valued. The third most important thing is respectful communication. You need to emphasize the importance of maintaining a respectful communication at all the time. Even when there are disagreement, we need to ensure the conversion remain professional and courteous. Then you also need to seek the common ground. Okay, share how you try to find common ground and area of agreement with the team member. Focus on the shared goals and objectives, which can helps to unite the team and facilitate the resolution. Then you also work on the constructive feedback. Describe how you offer constructive feedback and input to your team members. You can frame your suggestions in a positive and helpful manners to encourage a collaborative environment. Then you can also talk about the compromise and flexibilities. Mention that that you are willing to compromise and be flexible when appropriate. It shows that you're open to considering the alternative approach and finding a middle ground. Then we also talk about the conflict resolution strategy. It's a very, very important point where you can, one more thing is escalation if necessary. See, it's not necessary everything can be sorted out by yourself. So you can basically briefly discuss about the conflict if it's persist, how you basically resolve. If it cannot be resolved by you within the team, you can escalate to the issues to the higher authority. Example, like in one of my auditee was not agree on implementing the controls and all that. He was not agreed on findings. So I involved my senior audit head. So by this, I was able to convey the things, because sometimes what happened, authority required. So you cannot enforce everything by yourself. Okay. Then we talk about the conflicting resolution strategy. Conflicting resolution strategy is briefly discuss the conflict resolution strategy. So you have used in your past, such as brainstorming sessions, team meetings to discuss the concerns, openly, or seeking mediations from the neutral party if required. Then last but not the least is maintain focus on objectives. So while addressing the conflict, it is very essential. The primary focus should be always be on achieving the audit objectives. You should not diverse from the current communication. Let me give an example where, I can combine all these points. Okay. So this is how I answer the question. Thank you for asking this question. During one of my audit engagement, the conflict or difference of opinion can arise, and I believe in addressing them in a constructive manner. Okay. I actively listen to my team member perspectives. I encourage the open communication. I always maintain the respectful dialogue at all the time. And if conflict still persists, I see common ground and area of agreement within a team. I open to compromise. I open to, to compromise and flexibility whenever necessary to find the best possible solution, because I'm looking for the win-win situation. I'm open to resolve within the team if required. I'm open to discuss all the ideas. I would love to escalate the issues to the appropriate authority if things get not closed on a particular time frame. And because by the end of the day, my goal is always to ensure the team work cohesively and stay focused on achieving the audit objective effectively. So by providing this thoughtful and proactive response, you can demonstrate your ability to handle the conflict professionally and collaboratively, and which is crucial skill in any teamwork oriented environment, including your internal audit engagement and all that. So that is how you can able to handle. Okay. So let's move to the next question. One of the trickiest question asked by any interviewer, because this basically tests your experience. So question is, have you ever faced resistance from an employee during an audit, and how do you handle it? You can say employer auditee. Okay. Very common question. And that basically tests your experience, tests your leadership skills, tests your communication. Okay. So question is how to answer such question. So you can basically start with the processes, be honest. While answering this question in a job interview, it is very important to be honest. That's a very important thing. Be honest. Okay. But also you need to highlight your ability to handle the challenging situation professionally and effectively. So my suggestion is that, like as a response, I always say, like in my previous audit experience, I have encountered a situation where employee expressed resistance or hesitancy during an audit process. Okay. So because everyone believes that, okay, audit is to discover the findings and gaps and weakness in the process, and that can impact their productivity, that can impact their performance, that can impact their annual increment also. It means you're questioning someone's work. That is a people perspective we have. So and that is a major reason. Okay, so what I used to do in such situation, my approach has been to handle resistance with a combination of open communication, empathy, and professionalism. That's a very important point. Okay, you have to use these terms, it's very important. Okay, in such situation, my approach, I said open communication, empathy, and professionalism. It's a very important point. Okay, so I begin by engaging active listening and acknowledging the employee concern. I always strive to understand the perspective and reassure them that audit is not intended as a judgment of their performance, but rather than improving a process and ensure compliance. That's a very important thing. So this is how I build the trust. Okay, I take time to explain the audit objectives, okay, scope, methodology in clear and simple terms. I emphasize the value of audit bring to the organization, how it can be contribute to the overall improvement in the operations and controls. Additionally, I also encourage employee to provide the feedback and raise any issues or questions that may have during an audit process. Along with that, I always, I emphasize the value of audit bringings. I make a point to the approach. I make a point to be approachable and questions that may have during audit process. And I make a point to the approachable and accessible so the employee feel comfortable sharing their concerns. In some cases, I may encounter assistance from an employee who are protective of their process. It's a common thing, or feel uneasy about potential changes in the process. So in this situation, I collaborate with the employee and their managers to find the common ground and address the concern while ensuring the audit objectives are met. Ultimately, my goal is to foster a positive and constructive audit environment where employees feel comfortable cooperating and actively participating. By being transparent and respectful and empathetic, I can help to elevate the resistance and build the strong rapport with the audit stakeholder. So remember, when answering interview question, okay, about challenging situations, it is very important to demonstrate your ability to handle such situation professionally. You need to remain calm, okay, under pressure, and more important, maintain the collaborative approach to a problem solving. So providing specific example from your past experience, you can strengthen your response. This is my suggestion. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Can you walk me through your approach to documenting audit finding and recommendation, and how do you ensure your reports are clear and actionable? So first is basically I will do the thorough evidence collection. I start by gathering sufficient and relevant evidence through interview, observation, data analysis to support my finding. So 3 techniques I'm using here is interview, observation, data. Second is objective presentation. I present the finding objectively using clear and concise language, avoiding some technical jargons, because we need to ensure report is easily understandable. You do not need to mention about AES encryption is missing and all that. Then third, as an auditor, my role is to basically provide the recommendation, but that only based on a root cause analysis. So in any particular audit engagement, if required some root cause analysis, I will do the root cause analysis to identify the underlying response for the identified issue. Then I also make the things easy. So I will prioritize. I rank the findings based on the severity and impact on the organization to help the management prioritize the response. Then we talk about the actionable recommendation. So I provide the actionable feasible recommendation, which is aligned with the organization goals and resource to address the identified issue. I'll always use some kind of a pie chart, graph and all that, which give the clarity, which make the complex information more accessible. I involve the engagement. I involve the key stakeholders in the report review process to address these concerns and gain buy-in from the implementing the recommendation. And finally, I have a follow-up where I will emphasize the importance of continuous monitoring and follow-up to ensure the management actions plans are effectively implemented. So by delivering a concise, you can say an organized response, you can demonstrate your ability to communicate the complex process in a more clear and straightforward manner, which is actually valuable skill for any audit. Okay, so this is all from my side. Do let me know, shall I make more videos on coffee shots or interview questions? And do share your feedback in a comment box, because after my family, the second thing which is important for me, my gladiator subscribers who follow my content, and for that I'm building a content. So if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you get the best resources from this internet. Good day. Bye. Take care.